try to build the next rocket because everyone else is trying to do that. Maybe you do something that is a little less sexy, but you solve real problems. And if you solve real problems, people will pay you real money. And if you solve them well enough, they'll pay you enough money that you can grow and scale your business. And even investors will find that and want to invest in you.
Hi, I'm Tino Mantella, Chief Strategy Officer for Relevance, welcoming you to the 12th edition of Leading with Relevance. Today we have with us Bird Blitch, and he's got a great story in terms of his career and history. I'm sure you guys will all like that. I like to think about this as people busting through the status quo, impacting companies and communities. My goal is to interview and highlight the personal and professional journeys of each leader and find out, as Simon Sinek would say, about their why. And for the listeners, this is practical insights you can apply to your own leadership pathway. So I'm loving the opportunity to talk and learn from leaders. Every time I do one of these, it's just an experience for me as well, because there's always something you can take away and I take away from it. So I want to give you a little bit of history around Bird. He's founding partner of Ogeechee Ventures, a boutique growth equity firm focused on investments in healthcare innovation, financial technology, and outdoor recreation with a mission to improve lives in communities. He's a general partner at The Hub, which I'm sure we'll get into, in Pisgah Forest, North Carolina. So a little bit of a sidelight for Bird. He's the co-founder, and where I got to know him when I was running Technology Association of Georgia, which is called Patient Co, a cloud-based platform that simplifies patient payment transactions for hospitals, which was acquired by Waystar. And I got to know Bird early on when he started that company. Yeah,
That's right.
Bird, and it was just amazing, in terms of the growth there. But I remember back in the days when we were just chatting it up, and you were just really a pure startup, like so many.
Product market fit. We were trying to figure that piece out.
I know, and you evidently did it. So we'll hear more about that. Also, Bird was co-founder and CEO of BroadSource. I think that was in ATDC, wasn't it, Bird?
It was.
Yeah.
We were in the same office twice in the ATDC.
Yeah. So our offices at TAG were right there too. Georgia Tech grad, many awards, recipient of Georgia Tech Outstanding Young Alumni Award, member of the Council of Outstanding Young Engineering Alumni, board chair of the WellStar Foundation, member of the Georgia Tech Foundation, advisory member of the Advanced Technology, ATDC, which we just talked about, on the board of visitors of Duke Divinity. So that's just a little bit, Bird, about you. But I always like to start because I think, most of us have this background that's foundational, perhaps, some more than others. But in the early part of your life, what shaped you, and, snapshot of maybe your early years, 2 or 3 people that influenced you?
Oh man, 2 or 3 people. Well, while I'm thinking through those names, we both have a background tied to the YMCA. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good memory. Yeah, so you have to tell me about that, and we can get right into that. Yeah, I ran the Ys in Chicago. It was my first and longest career of about 20 years, so it was I loved it. And
we'll move all through that because our Series A investors were Sandbox Industries and Blue Cross Blue Shield out of Chicago.
Yeah.
But I think of some of our early years spending at the YMCA a lot of time, and it was in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
Grew up in Winder, and then my formative years were kind of out there in Athens. And man, we had some coaches there, like Coach Mike Castranis. He would just tell you to work so hard, and I learned a lot. I do think the Y, they called us Y boys. If you spent a lot of time there, and I always felt. What was it? Body, spirit, mind, and that triangle. That was a big influence on me, and just growing up with people competing in teams in athletics, winning some, losing a lot. I love the YMCA. I went to Athens Y Camp up in Tallulah Falls. those were good times. You know, and thinking back, I got to talk about my dad.
Yeah.
You know, he taught me. I just feel so lucky to have had him as a father. He taught me a lot about entrepreneurship, and I think it was just by osmosis. You know, riding in the car with him sometimes, hearing him, seeing him work late at night. I think all that starts to soak in, and that's why being around entrepreneurs at places like the ATDC is so important. You know, can't talk about my dad without talking about my mom.
Yeah. Got to get her in there.
Got to get her in there. You know, I mean, when I was at places like Athens Y Camp, she always wrote. She packed my lunch every day, and she wrote me a daily letter.
Oh,
And
wow.
I look back on some of those things. It's so easy not to write, but she was thoughtful and she was intentional. And, you know, she talked about a lot of things that I think eventually, like osmosis, kind of give you a lot of purpose. And I think, you know, she helped me see that making a difference in people's lives is important, something that matters. Um, and I'd say even though maybe later in life, someone more local to a lot of us here, an entrepreneur by the name of Ken Manning. He had started a business up in Boston where he was originally from. But we're always learning, we're always growing. So who knows? I think in 30 or 40 years, I'll look back at this time and say I was still early, early learning. But Ken used to teach me that just because we walk into our business every day, there's a lot of fires burning. And we see a lot of those fires, and we're okay because we're only going to focus on a couple of those fires to put those fires out. And I think the lesson there was it's about prioritization and staying focused on what truly matters. That allows you to move the needle forward in the business or in whatever else that you're working on.
Yeah, it's a couple things to follow up on there. The why, it's great to hear stories like that because I was part of my life really and you want to make sure that you're making an impact. And
Oh,
the why in Chicago was very unique. I don't know if you ever connected there since you were there, but we're the largest provider of housing, single occupancy housing. We did gang intervention, trying to get gang members out of gangs. It wasn't your typical why, but along the way we made impact. But I think your comment about your dad is interesting because I think of my dad, and a lot of times you have people think you have a father that sits you down and says, "Today I'm going to tell you about this or that." And my dad never did that either. But you learn so much. Just my dad was a beer
you're too busy.
distributor.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
dad, I was just saying, my dad was a beer distributor, and I learned more just like riding in the beer truck with him and listening to stories, or maybe he'd say something and it'd stick with me. But he never sat me down and said, "Today I'm going to teach you about XYZ." Sounds like your dad was a lot like that too.
It's called life, and I think
Yeah,
being intentional is just as much about who you choose to spend time with and how you learn from them and how you teach people that you're with. And the main thing is time. And so if that time is sitting next to your dad as he's going along in the truck, that's some of the best time ever. Same with my dad driving down just a state road in Georgia, and us talking through stories and sometimes a little bit of business, but a lot of just random talk.
yeah,
But you soak it up. You
you
start to
soak it
soak
up.
it up.
So I'm going to fast forward to Georgia Tech Industrial Engineering. How did you make the leap from high school to Georgia Tech? And at that point, did you decide you wanted to go the entrepreneur route? Industrial engineering doesn't necessarily take you an entrepreneur route, I guess.
Well, I remember my dad picked me up one time from from high school, and I got in the car and said, "Dad, I got two things to share. One, I love Sam Walton. I just want to one day have a business, own my own business like Sam Walton did." And he goes, "That's a good thing." And I said, "But I don't think I want to go to college. I don't need
Oh,
college."
wow.
And he said, "That's a bad thing." we we had one of those conversations. Um, it's March Madness. I can remember going with him out to the Final Four one time to watch the 1990 Lethal Weapon 3 from Georgia Tech play. And I got around some different people who were going to Georgia Tech, and I tested well in math. So it was something he said, maybe you ought to lean in a little bit more to this. But since he went to Georgia Tech, it was easy for me to say that's the last place that I wanted to be. And I think it was the last day that I could commit to a college, I committed to Georgia Tech. And I feel like in some way that was a bit providential because that was one of the real blessings in my life. I mean, it taught me real world problem solving, resilience, time management. I learned that hard work is non-negotiable, and I think through some of that, I got some other experiences in some student organizations. I built up an incredible group of friends that was I think a good support group for me even to this day. And I learned a little bit more about, I learned to bet on myself. Um, and I think that's part of entrepreneurship too, or as well. I ran for a student body president. I lost, and that was my only kind of time that I spent time in politics. But I learned a lot from Georgia Tech. It was
Yeah.
hard. It was unforgiving at times, and it was great people. And I got a lot of exposure.
Sounds like engineering, would you say that's foundational, something that, gave you a lot of baseline to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it taught you how to, like, when the pressure's on, how to think through a problem.
Yeah.
It taught you there was some collaboration there when you're doing, team the labs and things like that. But it definitely gave. I mean, I'm not. I was an industrial engineer major. I'm not that today,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really would. And I had some great professors too, that I'll never forget. That the teachers sometimes are the one that really open the light bulb goes on, and then you start chasing something that you're passionate about. And entrepreneurship, there was a lot of alumni around Georgia Tech who were great entrepreneurs, and I got to
Yeah.
know some of those, and I think those were some influences as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you learned a lot from the education in the classroom, but also outside the classroom. Even I'm sure it was a good experience, even though you didn't win student president, just going through that process. And a lot of times you learn more from not winning than winning, right? So
I mean, I can remember designing my first web page, and there was an aha moment around, we called it the World Wide Web,
yeah,
and it was just I'll never forget that. Like, wow, this is where the world is going, and that's what technology can do. As if you're involved in it, you do have the chance to change the world.
yeah, sounds a little bit like AI today.
Yeah, it really is. I
Yeah.
thought we might be able to get through this without saying AI, but now we can absolutely
Whoops, the
name it
duck
as a
drops
free
down.
podcast.
The magic
Yeah,
word is AI right now.
yeah, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Your comments.
So, broad source, that wasn't your first role though. So talk about like when you got out of college or during college, what was the kind of first job that then sent you to decide to create a
Oh
company?
man, you're taking me back some. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and you had this time with, I think your parents were like, well, we paid all this money for college for you years
Right.
to figure out what it is you want to do. So I remember going to the library and looking through. I was like, what am I going to do? Telecommunications was big at the time. I saw a lot of entrepreneurs doing real estate, and then I saw food. I was kind of like, wow, the food and beverage industry, everyone's got to eat. So
Yeah.
certainly that has to be a big market. I ended up going into telecommunications. I took a job with GTE, which is now
Oh,
Verizon,
oh
but it
yeah.
was up in Triangle Park, North Carolina. And that was really cool because I got to double down on, I felt like I had the soft skills eventually, um, but I needed to really focus more on my hard skills.
Yeah.
And skill sets, dealing with with like routers and Cisco and Nortel and all these companies back then that were making the internet come alive with data packets and frame relay networks and things like that. That was totally cool. And working with some really cutting edge engineers who were designing for these networks. I loved that part of my life. I learned so much, and it was great to be in a technology cluster of a lot of talent that was inspirational too. Kind of like when you're in the ATDC, you're just around a lot of people who are going
Yeah.
for it. And I think that continued to help me to learn by osmosis from just watching a lot of people and how they went about solving problems and creating change. So,
So how did you get to BroadSource from there and co-founding that company?
oh my gosh. So BroadSource, let's go back a ways. That was, okay. So I came back to Atlanta and I took a job with Cable and Wireless, which was a very large international telco, London based at that time. And my roommate at Georgia Tech was a guy named Brandon Hensley who played third base. And I had this cool office in Cable and Wireless. I was a sales engineer. And right next to me was a guy named Andy Monin, who happened to be catcher for Clemson for all these years. And he would be catching the baseball, and Brandon would be up there batting. And so they got to be friends. And through that relationship, Brandon introduced me to Andy. And for those of you know Andy, he went on to found a great company called VendorMate.
Yes, knew Andy well.
But Andy and I were co-founders in this thing,
Yeah.
and we were like back to Verizon. We had this name. I wanted Z in the name because that would sound more technology oriented, and we called it Zerizon. And then a week later, like we were going to be, around the horizon, but with a Z. We were going place with this business, and then like the next week, GTE and Bell Atlantic renamed themselves in the merger as
Verizon.
Verizon. You're like,
That's
we can't
funny.
do that. So we changed it to BroadSource, which was the one source for broadband.
Okay.
Built this platform where people could buy and sell telecommunication services. And if you remember, there was John McCain, right? Remember John McCain? He had gone and sponsored this bill to deregulate telecom. So you had a lot of choices in local and long distance, and data and internet was just new, and then you had wireless. And so the whole trick was 9 out of 16 times you got a bill that had an error on it.
Wow. 9 out of 16.
Technology to help you fix it. And there was a long road from where we started to where we finished. But I mean, that's how I started that deal with Andy. And then Andy went on to start another business, and then Trip Rackley came in and was chair of the business. And
Yeah.
Trip was served, I believe, as chair of TAG for a stint there as well.
Yeah.
So you guys probably got some time working together. And we kind of retooled the company, because if you're an IT director and you have multiple sets of services at multiple locations, you have a lot of confusion, and so it's even more bills. And we were focused on bills, and we got into payments. I love payments. When we started getting into helping people pay all their telecom bills, a light went on for me. And then in the meantime, you're not going to believe this, but Trip was building a company, kind of in some of our extra space at BroadSource. And that business was called Firethorn, where it took
Oh, yeah.
the mobile phone, remember this, and mobile
Yeah.
banking,
Firethorn.
put them together. And that was awesome to see that business and what he was able to do with that, with a cool team. And that just inspired me more around payments and bills, which, let's face it, not a whole lot of people get inspired around those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm happy that there are people that get inspired by different things. Makes the world go around. So, um, and then you end up selling that. Did you guys?
Yeah, we raised up to a Series E of
Okay.
funding, which I joke to a lot of people. I like to say, that means everybody makes money but the founders typically.
When you get to E, yeah, that makes sense.
You want to stay early in the alphabet, not late.
Uh,
But I learned a lot from that, and I feel like I kind of got out of that business by the skin of my teeth. We bought another company called Movero, renamed it, the whole thing Movero. It was focused then on mobile device management and mobile billing and payments, and then we really took that to the merged it with another company and called it Calero. So a lot of names mixed in alphabet soup there, but that was a great learning experience. We went through 2008, which I'm sounding old now by saying that, but if you remember 2008, and that was a tough
Yeah, it
year.
was a tough year.
That was a tough year
Yeah.
in the market. So, but I got to be around so many great people that I look, still connect with, and those memories I think continue to build an entrepreneur who has drive and excitement around building great teams and solving incredible problems into something you don't know where life's going to take you. One of those people I knew along the way, I knew at Georgia Tech, but I got to know better was Greg Foster.
Yeah.
And we miss Greg, love Greg. He was a great entrepreneur and investor. And he kind of convinced me that as you're thinking through problems, I think he used the rocket analogy. When I hear rockets, I think of Elon. But don't go, try to build the next rocket because everyone else is trying to do that. Maybe you do something that is a little less sexy, but you solve real problems. And if you solve real problems, people will pay you real money. And if you solve them well enough, they'll pay you enough money that you can grow and scale your business. And even investors will find that and want to invest in you.
And that sounds like a good segue into Patient Co. And you have some background in that as well. I've heard some of that before, but the birth of your daughter played a role in inspiring that. So talk a little bit about the company, how you got into it, how your daughter tied into it. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
that story.
Well, it's hard to think even where to start on that. I had the good fortune of meeting another entrepreneur here in town, Joshua Silver, who
Yeah.
now is CEO of Rainforest Payments. And we both had a mutual love for payments. And so we started spending time together. He was a junior at Georgia Tech. And I'd find him on weekends and we would whiteboard and do some things together around payments. I was fascinated with healthcare back to 2008. Okay, that's when Obama was running and he was really focused on the medical record. And so it was like, how do we put all of our records into one place? And I felt like, how do we put all of our healthcare expenses into one place? Now, before we got there, so first of all, yes, you've heard that about the birth of my daughter, and I share that still today with a real experience where we went in. My wife had our first child. We had a great clinical experience, but when we got home, I had lots of bills and
Yeah.
lots of questions and if I got 10 bills, I got them 3 times. So I had 30 bills, and then I had another 10, EOBs or explanation of benefits. And I had 40 documents, and I was trying to understand who, what, when, where, and how. Well, before we got to healthcare, we had a business we were kind of, noodling around with, and we called it, we had a couple of different names for it. It was before that was Secure Health Pay. And then before that, it had to do with invoices, and we called it end voice, like the end of invoicing. And we got to different small businesses and felt like there were some challenges there around how we would deploy it through technology, especially through QuickBooks and through a long set of circumstances. And it does have to do with the birth of our daughter. But we got to healthcare. Obama was running in 2008. Big market, big picture, a lot of light being shined into the healthcare
Yeah.
inefficiencies, opaqueness. And I was like, yeah, we can absolutely focus on this. And it's such a big market. It's huge, right? Healthcare is, if it was its own country, it'd have the 8th largest GDP,
Right. Wow.
cutting out $880 billion, and it's still just a drop in the bucket with the trillions that go into healthcare. So researched this a lot. We felt like, just getting a smaller piece of all these healthcare payments would be big. And of course, the patient responsibility portion was growing. I felt the frustration, but here's the kicker, Tino, is all the people in the front and back offices of health systems felt more frustration because it was hard to collect that dollar. It was hard to process that dollar and reconcile it back to their patient accounting systems, which was unique and different from any other accounting systems that most business use. So if you put that in a nutshell, and I go back to Greg Foster, we did something that wasn't incredibly sexy, but I've always believed in putting one solution that doesn't work well, improve it immensely, and then we put it in one box. So you had billing, you had payments, you had IVR, you had text to pay, you had online payments, you had refunds, you had reconciliation, you had payment plans. I can go down and down and down on all the different features we did around each one of those. And the whole goal was for patients to understand their healthcare expenses better. If they did that, number one, you got happy patients. Number two, you got happy providers. And three, the health systems were better because they were able to process more dollars. And when you're dealing with, 1%, maybe 2% gross margins, like those are huge dollars that you need to get in the door to keep the lights on. So it was an important solution. And then we just had a great team. I could go on and on about that team.
I remember your team. Yeah, some great people. And so I kind of remember that when you and I first met in your office a few times, you were still in the early stages. So was this kind of a hockey stick thing where, you were plugging along and then, it took you a while and then it
Oh,
spiked or
it's the 10-year overnight success story.
I can't remember. It was 10 years.
I mean, we were really focused on just building a great product. One of our core beliefs was that if we stay focused and built a great product, that in time, the rest would take care of itself. And that got to be hard as we grew because some of our competitors pivoted and kind of followed our business model and raised a lot more money at a much higher valuation. And whether it's here or for another day, I love talking to entrepreneurs about how that's not always the best thing to do. But we pivoted and grew inside of that space. We started all the small doctors, then we went to small hospitals, then we went to hospitals that owned 3 or 4 or 5 doctor groups, and then we would find that those medium-sized hospitals, if we could put it all on one platform inside this patient wallet, then just as you go experience as you go into healthcare, sometimes you're dealing with a doctor that's independent.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're dealing with a doctor that's in the hospital. Sometimes you're dealing with a hospital bill. Sometimes you're dealing with a doctor that's independent that's on the campus of a hospital. I mean, we send our kids to when they were born, they were going to Piedmont Pediatrics. Well, you would think that's part of Piedmont Hospital because it's on the
Campus.
campus. Piedmont Hospital's not. But what we did is took all of that and really developed one platform where you can understand all this together, pay in one format. And it's kind of like, my analogy might be you're going shopping at Amazon, you click on 2 or 3 or 4 things and you pay for them. You get one payment, and then Amazon makes sure to sell up on the back end with all the different vendors. And that simplified things a lot. And then eventually the hockey stick really occurred when we were able to go into larger health systems. I mean, these are like $2-3 billion of net patient revenue. And we'd get one in 1 year and then focus on delighting them.
Yeah.
Then after another big one. And after 3 years, we we're like, we can go run with this. And that's where we really started to make a lot of progress. I also have to add, though, we worked really hard on like our one-page strategic plan, our 5-year vision, on the KPIs to get there. We worked really hard on building a high trust, high performance team. We really focused on learning and passing those learnings down to the organization from what we saw in the market. We worked really hard on resiliency, and all those things did come together. But I like to think it was by design, and this is where the team was just so great. We had a great culture at Patient Co. It was an amazing culture, and it was a great company.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I think for entrepreneurs, you've made so many comments that they could, take to the bank for that from a standpoint of, I think one of your messages is, don't just have an idea, but if you live it and experience it like you would getting all those bills, that you identify a problem and then how, there's a solution, not just finding a solution to something that's not out there in terms of
And be
yeah,
passionate about it, and then
yeah,
and then then it doesn't have to be a rocket. Like putting billing and payments together is a big thing, and
Yeah.
it creates a lot of challenges today. And when you do it, it's kind of what we talked about AI,
Yeah.
or you have this aha moment, and that's when you know that you're really designing something that can truly make a difference. And if it's that good, people will pay you. So we're going into hospitals, we're getting paid, $1 million a year through our
Yeah.
software platform. And yet it still was like, in my mind, you put 5 cents into the coin slot,
Yeah.
and they were getting 50 cents back. I mean, who won't do that all day long?
I should know this, but the company that bought this, where does it stand now?
So we got bought by a company called Waystar. It's
Oh,
now
Waystar.
publicly traded as ticker WAY, so you can learn all about Waystar. And they
Okay.
are focused on healthcare payments. Their bread and butter. They started off, believe it or not, a big part of that company was here in Atlanta in Duluth called Navicure,
Yeah.
founded by Jim Denny
Jim
and some
Denny.
other. Yeah. And I can't believe this, but somehow, Navicure merged with their biggest competitor, Zerman. They renamed it called Waystar. So here they had all the healthcare payments from the what I call the public payer, which is like Medicare, Medicaid, and the private payer like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, but they didn't have the patient revenue. And you put all these three things together, and now you can go into just about anyone in healthcare and say, like, I've got everything covered on the revenue cycle side.
Yeah.
This is one singular platform that delivers it all seamlessly. And it was one of those situations where we were better together. It was really cool, led by a great CEO who's still running it today, Matt Hawkins. You got to get him on this podcast.
So I'm switching gears a little bit, but still on the same topic. So, we're the payments capital or the fintech capital of the US, if you will. I don't know if you still feel like we're there, but it's, revolutionizing a lot of the industries, including healthcare. So do you see a lot more opportunities for Atlanta and for healthcare and for fintech here?
Oh yeah, I do, and here's why. Because these products and companies are about people and ideas, and the ideas won't go anywhere without great people. So if you think about one of our key sayings at Patient Co is ABR, always be recruiting. And to do that, you got to be in places where there are great technology clusters of people and talent. So we have a
Yeah.
lot of that here in Atlanta around FinTech. I mean, it's swarming with stuff. I get phone calls all the time. I'm going to go have a meeting next week with Asif Ramji, who is a great, awesome fintech success story here in Atlanta, on the businesses that he's built. And he's a fantastic person. And I'm going to share with him a company that a fintech company that I've invested in London. And they have their eye on the Atlanta market on kind of from an expansion standpoint. Why? Because of talent and because of recruiting is so important. And that's how you build great products and great solutions. And that's how you build into great markets. So I think Atlanta will continue to support fintech in a lot of different ways. I mentioned my co-founder, Joshua Silver with Rainforest. They're building some really cool products. And I look at Waystar. I mean, huge payment healthcare platform, and a lot of engineers working on solving these really tough challenges in healthcare today. And Waystar loves Atlanta, and why? Because of the talent here.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We hope they all stay in Atlanta and we bring more here. And, Tags played a role in that over the years as well.
Tag
So
has played
that's
a
good to
great
see.
role in that. In
Yeah.
fact, they have a yearly summit. I mean, I got to give Tag some props here because I think they've helped bring a lot of attention and capital and even more people to Atlanta because of fintech.
Yeah. FinTech South, there's FinTech, a few
Yep.
FinTech events now. So you're an investor. You've been an investor for a while, I guess. Talk about the company that you did you start it, and what kind of things are you and what qualities are you looking for in terms of investing? What are you investing in?
So I'm now running a company called Ogeechee Ventures.
Geechee.
So if you wonder about Ogeechee, it's a river that I kind of spent some time growing up doing some hunting and fishing. That kind of starts near Greensboro, Georgia. It goes all the way to Savannah, and it's the only river from beginning to end with the same name in the state of Georgia. So kind of taking the love for there's so much life involved with rivers, and I think the same thing involved with entrepreneurship. It's where you live life to the fullest, sometimes the hardest, but to the fullest. And so we're focusing on investing in two main areas, three subcategories in each area. On the nonprofit side, preachers, teachers, and doctors.
Oh, wow.
And preachers around this idea of we live in a broken world, and how do we take God's love and share it and shine it more into the communities where there's need, just like what you were doing in Chicago, like putting business ideas to work, to heal people physically, emotionally, mentally. And that kind of goes down into teachers. My wife is very involved in the Ansley School here in Atlanta, which is helping to educate children of homeless families. I mean,
Yeah.
that is really, really amazing work that they're doing. And I'm just calling out some of these areas where we have chosen to invest because back to community and making impact. Like, it kind of is all circular. Doctors, I'm chair of the Wellstar Foundation, and Wellstar, we're really, I mean, we just had a gala Saturday night, raised $1.3 million
Wow.
around women's
Congrats.
health.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the opportunities in women's health we have to change lives right here in Georgia. And when you take philanthropy and innovation and what Wellstar is doing with catalysts, you intersect that, you really do get impact. And then on the other side, I call it the for-profit, right? How we pay the
Yeah.
bills. And that's healthcare technology.
Okay.
That is FinTech and payments. And then this third category I've fallen in love with, which is outdoor recreation. And that can be outdoor recreation technology or businesses. But bottom line is, in this digital age we live in, I think there's a thesis of mine that we're going to seek more analog experiences. And if you get on a bike or you get in the woods, you get on a river, you breathe fresh air, you get the sunshine, we're all happier people at the end of the day because of that.
Yeah, and you talk about Ogeechee, so now I'm understanding it. Part of it is, you got to make profit and money on that one side, but with the nonprofits, the preachers and the teachers, that's more of a contribution to social betterment.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
I
terrific.
think exactly the way we look at it. And, we want to grow our assets to be able to do more and give back. But what an incredible, I mean, I wouldn't be on this podcast today if it weren't for all the folks and organizations that put time into our success and helped us break through some pretty tough problems. But there's people from all different walks of life. And how do we give back to our community and give others the same opportunities around education, around health, around all these things that help us live our best lives? And that's, to me, what this country is about. That's, to me, what this community is about. And I'm just so thankful to be a product of it. I'm extremely thankful for that. And I love it very much. I love the people that are part of it. And I think we have a unique platform and opportunity to help others along the way, and at the same time really improve the fabric of our community.
Yeah, so that's good. Are there people that can make donations to the fund that would tie into the nonprofit side or the charitable side?
Sometimes so right now, the answer is no.
Okay.
And just to be frank with you, I haven't gotten into the, oh boy, if we're responsible for other people's money, how do we make sure that we're held accountable for allocating it in the right way? So we've chosen to partner with great groups that are already doing incredible work. And how do we help them do more with either our knowledge, our people associated with Ogeechee, or our capital? And we feel like if we get involved with people that are already doing it and they have great infrastructure and great teams, then just like investing in growth stage technology companies, we can invest in these type of organizations. They know where the problems are. They just need more people, more talent. I kind of like Ashish Thacker at the CEO Council,
Yeah.
onto this. I mean, he's another great one, great guy. And he said, where at Wellstar, he's on the foundation as well, and he says, we're focused on helping people with their heart share so they can connect, in this case, healthcare to the problem, mind share so they understand it, and then, of course, wallet share. And I think that summarizes what we're trying to do at Ogeechee.
So we this time has gone pretty fast. We have a few more minutes, but I did want to ask you about the hub
Yeah.
and tell people what that's about. A little different than
Oh
what we've
man,
just been talking
the
about.
hub is one of my favorite things that we get to work on. It's up in Western North Carolina, so if you think about that area that was really damaged with Hurricane Helene, they're fighting some wildfires up there right now. You talk about resiliency, but we've got a business up there, and it really gets people on mountain bikes out into Pisgah National Forest and
Oh,
DuPont
wow.
National Forest. And it's kind of like you get to go out for the thrill and then you get to come into the hub for the chill. So think about a really cool outdoor recreation store with all the things, like this jacket I'm wearing, you might want to wear. And we kind of label it as bikes, beer, and gear. So we're near some really cool trails. You get to get a good workout, bring your bike in or buy a bike from us or rent a bike, and then you get really cool beer, and it's just a great place to hang out. And I got to tell you, from there, like the people that are involved in the hub are great people who are focused on helping people live their best life in the outdoors. And that's something that is a little different from software, but it kind of is all about building a good culture
Yeah.
and, and taking care of customers. Some of the same principles. Yeah.
So we haven't said AI more than a couple times, but I would be interested in your thought about how AI is going to change the health industry. It's a big question, but
No doubt. Okay. I mean, AI is everywhere. It is going to be, especially in places like revenue cycle, I think it's going to help people do some things that are a little more mundane, but are equally important because healthcare, I mean, I remember my dad saying once, I asked him why why United was filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And he says, simple, cash flow. If you have more expenses going out than you have revenues coming in, you have a cash flow problem. And so Warren Buffett always used to say, cash is king. Well, if you
yeah,
go back to health systems and you think about payments and filing these claims and getting these things paid faster and coded
yeah,
correctly through the insurance companies, I mean, AI can help with all that.
yeah,
And then, I mean, I'm passionate about helping rural healthcare and passionate also about access.
yeah,
And and we all know, I mean, you've gone to the any number of doctors or hospitals.
yeah,
It's hard to be a patient in the United States health system. Great healthcare, but it's hard.
yeah,
It's hard to get an appointment. It's hard to know if you're in network or out of network. It's hard to know if you've met your deductible. It's hard to know sometimes what the doctor is telling you to do, how to follow up for referrals, what medicines you should be on. I mean, AI is going to help all this and also help with diagnoses. It's going to help with just speed to solution. Like if you think of all the chronic illnesses that people have, they're all a little different shade of gray, and AI is going to help with really understanding these inputs to get the right solutions and right medicines. I mean, I'm a huge go all in on AI for healthcare, and I think it's going to truly change healthcare as much as any industry out there, and it already is.
yeah. And it sounds like it's just building on what you did at Patient Co. It's I can hear your theme of help people get answers faster, do things better, make sure the medical community is, because it can be really anybody that's tried to get a bill or whatever, paid, it's still can be very difficult.
It's very difficult, and also just catching things before. I mean, soon you're going to be brushing your teeth and it's going to be Bluetooth enabled to something in your house and it's going to read your saliva and say that you might have a cold coming and the doctor's going to be able to send some medicine, shows up at your doorstep. There's just 1,000 different ways it can go to make quicker, faster decisions around the decision making. And I'm excited about that aspect.
If you had one thing, maybe this is all the last question, but for people starting companies, let's say, what's your one piece of advice that you would give them?
Oh my gosh. What's my one piece of advice? I mean, there's so many. You could say focus, you can say stay resilient, recruit a great team. I might go back to learning. Learning. Mike Hirsch, who is COO of Patient Co for a while, he's a well-known name in Atlanta
Yeah,
technology. He would say a learning organization is a growing organization. And
yeah,
so every sales call you go on, every time you're recruiting someone, you're learning something. How does it not stop with the co-founder or the CEO? How
yeah,
does it get down to all different aspects of the organization? So that organization, back to what we just talked about, can make faster, quicker decisions, can
yeah,
be empowered because they're smarter and they understand what turns the dial at the business. And then you're really onto something powerful because everyone's learning, everyone's applying it, everyone's teaching it inside the organization. It's a learning, growing organization. Your customers feel that you're punching out faster product releases that are more meaningful, focused on the real pain points of the customers. Maybe it's learning and
yeah.
figure out how to make the organization a learning organization. At Patient Co, we had an email address called learnings@patientco.com. And
Interesting.
anytime someone came back from the field and learned something, the goal was just to keep publishing that so it got in our DNA about
Uh,
how important it was to learn.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a good place to end. So, with that, Bird, this has been great. The hour went really fast, and appreciate you everything you've done. And we're done now. So, but yeah, thanks.
I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do for our community.
Thank you.